I'm Charlie Fitzpatrick. This is again the Ed Summit, and come on, there we go. Teaching with the GIS Toolkit. And I'm really excited because these are three presenters I've known for a long time, and they're wonderful and they've been doing good work for a long time. Judy Bach and Mike Wagner and Dominique Evans-By. Um, they've had changes in their careers, but wow, they've been doing it for a long time. So I'm very excited and I want to make sure that they get the best opportunity to rock and roll. So let's get started with Judy, integrating geospatial technologies into AP human geography. Judy, I'm going to stop sharing and it'll be all yours.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. Here we go. I'm Judy Bach. I'm director of the online geospatial programs at Elmhurst University, which is just outside of Chicago. One of the programs that we have there is a 5-course certificate program in human geography for advanced placement teachers, for AP human geography teachers. And in those courses, when this was developed, it was to not only impart geography education to people who might not know it but found themselves teaching human geography, but to also teach about the framework and how to connect to it, different geospatial skills, and certainly to involve geospatial and different types of technology tools into the AP Human Geography curriculum. So in our first course, teachers explore the AP HG curriculum framework in great depth, and we incorporate story maps as part of their learning experience. It's a very gentle, very low learning curve in terms of the incorporation. We just really start with we have our journals go week by week. These are 8-week sessions, and so it matches up very nicely with 7 units in AP Human Geography. So our very first journal in Story Maps is about thinking geographically. They're given some topics to talk about, but what they're focusing on in the journal is looking at the different text tools that are there, and they have to incorporate those. Our second journal is in the second week where they're studying population and migration, and we ask them to include some quotations and some images. Like I said, very small steps into building a story map. Very gentle. By our third week, they're starting to add buttons and multimedia that will match up with migration, with cultural landscapes. And by the 4th week, they're actually doing a swipe map as one of the basic tools. I always figure you can't see our top menu very well. By our 5th week, we're studying agriculture and rural land patterns. And one of the things that's so important, we think, is to really match this all up with the AP Human Geography curriculum, because the teachers teaching that are so tied to that and want their students to do so well on the AP exam. So tying into the curriculum is really very important. In Unit 5, where they study agricultural and rural land use patterns, one of the topics is about Von Thunen. And you can see that the learning objective is to describe how Von Thunen, how the model is used to explain patterns of agriculture, and one of the essential knowledges is that they help explain rural land use. So the activity that the teachers are doing is watching kinghorn, but in their journal, this is the week that they're going to study how to do a map tour. So they watch the video, and they need to describe, so this is one of my students, they describe information about what they were seeing that, again, ties into the curriculum. And then they do a map tour. And they're only required to do 3 locations that occur in the video, but there's some other parameters. One, they needed to include an image. They needed to also describe what was going on there and to use different map bases as they added these 3 places. So it's a really quick assessment for me to see that they know how to incorporate a map tour. And then they also, as part of the journal, do have to talk about how that model is reflected in that video and the relevance of Von Thunen today. We also look at different industrial and economic development patterns. So in week 7, one of my favorite series videos to use is Planet Money Makes a T-shirt. And again, just tying it right back into the AP Human Geography curriculum, looking at spatial patterns of development, looking at different economic sectors, looking at labor, transportation, break of bulk points. And so after the students watch this particular video, here's another one of my students. With some required text and added a video, they need to do an express map. And so you do not need any ArcGIS background in order to build an express map. But again, they're building upon skills that they already have in terms of incorporating images, text, adding some hyperlinks, and telling the story of making a t-shirt. And again, as an instructor, I can very well see that they've tied into the different economic sectors. Our second course is really focused on geospatial skills and geospatial thinking. There is some continued work in story maps. There's some introduction to ArcGIS Online, but we work in Google Earth. Geo inquiries are used so teachers get used to the different tools and kinds of things that ArcGIS Online can do. And certainly the Story Maps Gallery, where they can connect it into curriculum. And earlier today I saw Joseph Kursky talking about the Living Atlas, which would be an amazing thing for teachers to connect to. And our third course, it was specifically designed to start building ArcGIS online skills with the teachers. And again, very low learning curve. Our first lesson is how do you add a map note, and how do you change what the symbol looks like, and adding your description, and adding hyperlinks, and adding images. In our second week, when we again go back to population and migration, you know, they're adding different kinds of layers. So layers from ArcGIS Online, adding layers from the Living Atlas, and you know, kind of adding a little bit more to what they see. So we want to compare population density to different aspects of the physical environment to see if there's any relationship. So one thing, this population density layer came in fuchsia. So one thing that they did learn how to do was to change the color in doing that. So if we look at the climate, we can then put on the world population. So again, clicking on and off layers that you might need to do. And just to see, you know, is there a relationship between population and the environment? And we can do the same thing with looking at elevation. Looking at patterns, you know, spatial distribution of different elevations, what we see in terms of the terrain, and hey, does that affect anything in terms of, well, where people live or don't live? So, you know, again, the idea is to connect back into the framework, and again, it does very nicely with identifying factors that influence population distribution, and then looking at physical factors. These are a couple examples that are not ArcGIS Online. They're using technology. This first lesson came from Margaret Chernowski, who was a Maine Geographic Alliance coordinator for many years. And that is to create a population pyramid, which, again, is part of our population unit in the AP curriculum. The students find where they can download the international data by country and put it into an Excel spreadsheet, modify the spreadsheet so it only has the 3 columns that they're going to need, and then right in Excel you can build population pyramids. I think this is important because if we want students to do story maps and to reflect that information, they can now add some of their own population charts or graphs And all of this labeling was also done in Microsoft Excel. I've also saw earlier today some really wow kinds of things about doing population maps in Living Atlas. So we may be adding some changes to the curriculum. Looking again at economic development, this lesson came from Joseph Kursky in 2009. And again, we're teaching the teachers so they can work with their students on how to add different kinds of data layers into ArcGIS Online and trying to keep it at a fairly low level. It'll work and you'll feel comfortable and say, wow, I did that. So in this case, collecting data from Dex Knows about your local community. So again, in terms of looking at those economic sectors, bringing it in into an Excel worksheet, which you now have a data table, and you save it as a comma-separated value, a CSV layer. So when you go to ArcGIS Online and you're going to add information, it always says you can add a layer from file, which is something that's saved to your own computer. And the information plots in there. This one happened to be doctor's offices in relationship to a hospital, and different information that I've had collected to show as an example to students. We work with configuring the boxes and changing colors and buffering to look at spatial distribution and distance from the hospital. Our fourth course is really just a much deeper dive, especially into urban economic and population geography issues, and definitely a much deeper dive into doing visual analytics with symbolization, filtering, and then getting into the analysis tools. So far, we are continuing to use the classic viewer, but that's going to be another change coming up. And let me just give you, when we get into our last course, which is the capstone, there's still so much more to expose teachers to. It's hard to even decide. But we kind of saved the last course for looking at using the apps. And so again, another example from economic sectors is doing Survey 123. So not only doing a survey that I've set up about coffee shops, but also to create their own survey for their students' use. Survey 123 dynamically downloads onto maps. And so we can click off a few things that pop up automatically. But you can see that we had added, students could add their home. They could add a buffer from their home to see how close the coffee shops, oops, wrong one, how close the coffee shops are to their home. We can look at changing some styles on this. So maybe we want to do a heat map. And because this is a local scale, students can start speculating, why are we seeing this pattern? Where is this pattern of coffee shops in our community? They could also go out, and because there's a lot of attributes that were collected, for example, maybe we want to know if they have other things besides just drinks. And there were some choices. In this case, it was just yes or no. Sometimes there's a drop-down menu of choices. And students can go in and enlarge these symbols or change the color, but they can see if there's other things for sale other than just something to drink. I'm losing my, So there's so many new things. Last year I included Learn ArcGIS in terms of using the GeoPlanner and connected that in with challenges of urban change. So it's always just trying to keep up to date. I don't plan the activities for students too far out because since the last time I taught this class, we now have ArcGIS Hub, dashboards, Community Atlas, changes to story maps, and the new map viewer. So I'm going to have to decide what I'm going to use and how I'm going to connect it back into that curriculum. As we envision the future in terms of what we are doing, there's so many cool things. We want to do more than just do the, oh, wow, that's really cool, and make sure that it connects to and aligns with curriculum. And I don't want to just say especially AP Human Geography, but I know those teachers are just so concerned about that. We want them to see how to incorporate the technology so they're substituting what they're doing, not adding to, which sometimes becomes overwhelming in their time. So we know the technology is going to keep changing, and therefore we as educators need to keep making those changes as well and keep updating as we go along.
Very cool. All right. Thank you, Judy.
You're welcome.
All right. Next up, we're going to jump to, wait a minute, I got to share my screen here. I missed that opportunity. Yay. There we go. There. Thanks, Judy. Next up, using story maps in the classroom, building interactive lessons to assessments with Mike Wagner. All right, Mike, if you're ready to rock and roll, it's all yours.
I am. All right. Thanks, Charlie. Let me share my screen here. All right. So the basis of this presentation. So a little bit about me. I'm a earth science, geospatial science teacher, and about 8 years ago, I was asked to lead a GIS curriculum development and take on a role as a GIS lead teacher. I work in a large county in Northern Virginia, and we have about 80,000 students. And so dealing with and working with teachers, I get a good sense of what teachers want, need. And I myself as a teacher, we all know that there are times where we want students to learn brand new things and have them creating their own maps and adding data. And we want them to be able to analyze that data and then draw some conclusions or add some inquiry into that. And then there are other times where we just want them to be able to do analysis with inquiry. And this is the point where I started thinking about how could we use the tools that Esri is building, especially story maps, and how can we create lessons that are already ready to go. You give them a link, you give the teachers a link, teachers give students a link, and all of a sudden now they've got a tool at their fingertips to be able to then just, there's a lesson, explore, and get feedback. So this is the premise where I come from with this. So starting with some of I'm just going to go through examples that have been created or things that I've modified in order for our students to be able and our teachers to be able to use. So the first thing is there's a book called Bird, Butterfly, Eel that is a elementary story about migration. And what's unique about these three species is that they're native to our area. So it's great for the students to connect to. But when I was talking to some teachers at these lower levels, K through 2, they wanted to be able to add in a spatial component. Because students were not connecting with where we live, where are we in the world. So this story map, this was a perfect way. There's a lot of the science teachers that were teaching this book or using this book. So we created this story map that basically goes through and takes them from where are you in the world? Where are we in the world? Where is North America? And then moving into the United States and so on. You see they kind of scroll through, they kind of interact with the map and adding that into, so where is your school within here? So learning about their place in not only in Loudoun County, but now in their local area. And then following along with the book talks about, well, where do we find the barn swallow? And it talks about agricultural areas. So you have a map here of information that talks about, well, where are the agricultural areas of the county? And then same thing about, well, where does it migrate to? And then it goes to the monarch butterfly. And we actually have a program in the county, which is monarch butterfly way stations. And we have a group of schools that are participating in that. So it goes through and explores where are those schools that have a monarch butterfly way station. And then the eel, where are the water sources where this would be able to move into Loudoun from where it normally is. So that's just an example of a very lower level K2 example where students can then interact with this and they can zoom in out of the maps. They can look at and learn more about not only connecting with the book, but then connecting to their local area. Where are they in the world? So the next example that I'll put up, this is something that was created by the Virginia Geographic Alliance. And this is also part of it is Catherine Kiernan, who built some of the learn lessons for Esri. And this is something that I put together. This was teachers wanted to be able to do this, but they didn't have time for students to step by step go through the lesson. So what was a way that we could actually take that content, that same exact content, and put it in a lesson format where students can interact with their questions and interact with the maps and not have to take the time to build that. We want them to be able to build, we want them to be able to create. But sometimes in a year, we all know as teachers, there's not that time to be able to do that and give them that much freedom, well, not freedom, but the time to do that. So here, I'm just walking through a couple of things I want to point out with this. Number one, I embed the questioning within the side, but at the end of this, I'm going to show you how you can actually embed something like a Google form into the story map, where they can actually answer the questions at the bottom of the bottom of the story map. So then be able to answer the questions within there. So this basically goes through the lesson, but it has everything in here that they're supposed to do. Clicking on and reading the information on there, the questions that they would answer. What I really like about this is being able to take then this this content in the web app builder and embed a web app builder to where they're able to then zoom in and they can still use the measure tool and then be able to measure from one area to another or area distance and things like that. So it gives them that interactivity without having to build it first. So this was, and then as we go through, there's another one here where you can use look at the land use and the satellite imagery and zooming around, being able to look at the different areas. So this is just another example of being able to have it already prepared. And I can tell you that some of this stuff was actually sparked by COVID and the need and the desire for teachers to have something that is interactive online that students could immediately go and go through the lesson and teachers can get feedback from them. So some of this was sparked by that over the last year. And then let's scroll down. I'm going to show another way, and this isn't necessarily a lesson story map, but what I found with teachers is that these are popular. These are story maps that have been created for content to access to their content. Any of these, let me click on this and see if I'm not sure why this is not. Here we go. Hopefully you can still see that. And it's...
Yep, we're seeing the clouds.
Yeah, and I'm for some reason not able to scroll down on it. It was working before.
Well, just walk us through.
Yeah, I'm just going to walk you through it then. So in this story map, this is one thing that we use this for is good for teachers' content and putting content all in one area for them. So this particular story map has a whole set of layers that are found in ArcGIS Online that already have to do with meteorology or climatology. It has already prepared maps that they can just open up and go to for easy access. No searching involved. Everything's already embedded. Then there's a lesson, the geo inquiries. Everything is already packaged for them in that content area. So somebody like an earth science teacher who's getting ready to teach meteorology, climatology, hey, I want to use GIS. I want to embed GIS into this lesson that I'm doing. Well, here's the one-stop shop for everything related to meteorology, climatology that is in the online environment or a map that was created by somebody within the county or myself or a lesson that they can give to the students to do, a geo inquiry for them to do. So all of that was all packaged into one. And these have become popular because, again, it's a time saver. It's something that you don't have to go out and look for a lot of things. We all know that there's a ton of content out there to be able to search for and to be able to use. And this is just one way to kind of package it all together into one. And then the last thing, I talked about how you can use this as an assessment, or how you can have them answering questions and get feedback. You can take any type of form, whether it be the Survey 123 or the Google form. I just took a sample of a form that I used in class. And they can have this at the bottom of the story map, and they're putting in their answers right here in the form, embedded in the story map. So if you take the idea of the land use in Chesapeake Bay, and as they're going, as they find a question, they just scroll down, or they click tab at the top of the story map, and zoom down to the form and fill out and answer that question. And then they move on to the next set of content. So just some ideas about how to utilize story maps for interactive lessons and being able to embed assessments in there as well.
Very cool. Building the assessment into the content itself, always a fun thing. All right, I'm going to share again and very quickly say, all right, thank you, Mike. And our next presenter, Dominique Evans-By from Clark Magnet High School in Glendale, California, or La Crescenta. Students search for sustainability. Dominique, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Charlie. And I'm here today with our class of 2021 valedictorian, Arpi Kashishian, who will be my co-presenter. So today,
Yay, Arpi.
Yay, Arpi. Today, we're going to discuss the Career Technical Education GIS pathway at Clark Magnet High School, our Environmental GIS capstone course, and then Arpi's going to tell us about the process students use to develop a project, and she'll showcase her project that they worked on this year. So the Career Technical Education GIS pathway I developed has three main courses. We have Geology of Disasters, Honors GIS and Remote Sensing, and Honors Environmental GIS as the capstone. All these courses are UC A through G accepted and CTE integrated. For Geology of Disasters, we use the Natural Hazards text, which is a college textbook by Keller and DeVecchio, and it's got 14 chapters on different natural hazards. So we cover the academic content of these chapters, and we integrate the Learn ArcGIS lesson gallery tutorials that just mesh perfectly with our content. And this year, I've even introduced virtual reality. In my Honors GIS and Remote Sensing, the first unit, we cover the sensors and we cover the satellites that collect remotely sensed data. And this year, I even introduced an engineering component where we're building CubeSats, our own satellites. And then we go over the GIS, where we review WebGIS, introduce mobile apps, and introduce ArcGIS Pro. For the second unit, we focus on the ocean, and we have a couple of remotely operated vehicles that we run that gather data from underwater, bring it back, map and analyze it. We're even using full motion video in ArcGIS Pro to showcase our data that we've collected in the ocean. In unit 3, we go back to the CubeSat that we built in the first unit, and we fly it to collect land data. So we'll use a weather balloon. I'm going to be incorporating UAVs into the course so we can fly it that way, or just use the UAV to collect data to map and analyze on land issues. In the fourth unit, we go to Mars. So we use the NASA data portal and collect data from Mars, and then use NASA's GIS tool, JMars, to map and analyze the red planet. We've even brought it into ArcGIS Online this year, and it looks really cool. Now, my Honors Environmental GIS class is all project-based and student-directed. So in the first quarter, they focus on a land or water issue to investigate. The second quarter, they focus on an air or climate issue to investigate. The third quarter, They scale up whatever project they choose to look at it at a global issue. And the fourth quarter is a term I borrowed from Esri, the GIS Young Professional. So in this quarter, we just really focus on showcasing the projects at conferences, and incorporating the projects that they've done into lesson plans. They'll work with another teacher and they'll develop a lesson plan for their class. They'll do an Esri MOOC, and they'll update their resume, to incorporate everything that they've learned and done in the class. So now I'm going to turn it over to Arpi so she can tell you about her process in developing the projects.
Hi, everyone. The process for developing our projects consists of a variety of steps. So first, our team brainstorms. So every member in the team comes up with a different idea, and then we decide on which idea best fits our needs and we can use for competitions that year. Then we move on to some initial research, which just consists of each person doing a little research on a topic, a smaller topic within the larger project. And then we start working on the project proposals, where we go into details on what we want to do and how our project can link to other competitions. And we pitch our ideas to Miss Evans, where she then gives us back some constructive criticism. And we use that to add some minor adjustments and improve our final project before we move on to literature reviews. And in the literature reviews, every person in the team partners up with someone, and they conduct in-depth research on the specific topic that they're focusing on within the project. And lastly, we create an action plan, which consists of a timeline stating what we want to have done by when and who is responsible for what part of the project. Here is our story map called Student Search for Sustainability that we made for this year's project. So the three main issues we focused on were food waste, plastic waste, and also a lack of plant-based options at our schools. We created a swipe map which demonstrates the change over time of a local landfill within 1 year. And we were also inspired by the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and our project reached 10 out of the 17 goals, which is really great because it touched on a lot of different aspects regarding sustainability. The way we decided to combat each issue varies, but for reducing food waste, the best method that we found is to simply donate the food. We created a map with ArcGIS, which illustrates where nearby food banks and food shelters are, which are seen with the red dots, the blue dots. And we did this in order to just see what's nearby so we can donate them. And for adding the vegetarian options, the easiest way was just to create new menu items that we could add to our schools for snack and lunch. And for converting plastic to bamboo, we want to switch over from the plastic utensils to bamboo utensils. For implementing our solutions, we made a map which has a drive time analysis for each organization. And out of all of the organizations we asked, 2 agreed to work with us. And this drive time analysis just shows how long it will take for the organizations to get to and from the schools. For adding vegetarian options, we created a survey using ArcGIS surveys. And this just asks what students would want to have for lunch and if they're interested in having the option, so you can determine what menu items are most in demand. And lastly, for converting plastic to bamboo, we created a map which illustrates the different bamboo warehouses within the US. And we contacted each warehouse to see what their prices are and which would be best suited to work with us. Our results is that we are able to significantly reduce food waste by sending out excess produce to organizations like Food Forward. Here's a route which shows how the food banks can come to and from the schools in a convenient manner. And for adding the vegetarian options, we created a dashboard, which is a visual representation of the survey. And this was just really useful because when we're talking to the nutrition services director about our goals, she could easily see there is a demand for more plant-based options, and it just made it a lot easier to show to other people who aren't as knowledgeable with GIS. And yeah, so I hope that this project can encourage all of you to explore GIS further with your classes, and also just remember that even if you don't have a science-based class, GIS can be incorporated into a variety of different subjects. And I hope that you can explore competitions near your area and be inspired to make a change.
Cool. Okay, Charlie, back to you.
Wow, that's really cool. That's really cool. All right. So if the presenters can go back through, we don't have a very active chat list here, but now audience, go in and ask your questions, make your comments. In the meantime, I do want to call them up one by one. Judy and Mike, can you add your cameras and speakers as well? Judy, were there any things that you wanted to add into that you didn't get to say, or that you thought about on the basis of some of the things from Mike and Dominique and Arpi?
Yeah, I think part of it is we want teachers, and just like I've been seeing the other two presenters, we want them to start incorporating GIS into their curriculum, and we have found that some of it's just it's intimidating for them to get started. So we wanted to make it a really easy. Here's how you can slide into it. You're doing it. Just start using these things. The lessons we give to the teachers, they can use with their own students, or they can modify them for their own students. So I think our big takeaway is when we're working with a group that's working with the College Board, they always have specific goals they need to meet, and so we want to make sure that we're connecting back into that. But I think that's true of all education, that we want to look at whatever standards there are, or the objectives that we have, to make sure that it happens. So when I looked at Mike's stuff, I thought, wow, that's so perfect to set up those different units for teachers, and have that available, and to have it as a virtual community that teachers can go to. And when I listening to Arpi and what she was doing, I mean, how far advanced students can really be, and if we just give them that. And so that whole curriculum that the school has there is just so great, and really, you can tell that they're really, getting kids to push the envelope a little bit there, and I think that's so wonderful. And so I think what we're trying to do is just start small. Maybe we need to expand bigger, but we don't want to scare them away.
Well, hey, along that line, Mike, you've got elementary school students getting into doing GIS, and I think all of us would have loved to have done that. Have you seen any benefit from this over the years that you've been working with this?
So we just started getting some of our geospatial students, which is a junior senior level class. We've started getting some of them telling us that, hey, I did this in middle school, I did this in elementary school, and so it takes, obviously it takes a series of years to get them up through the system and be able to see some of the benefits. But yes, we have seen it, and I'd like to address one of the questions here. I think somebody asked about starting how you first get to start using the tools in a middle school classroom. I think, and the easiest thing that I found is to find things that are already done that fit your curriculum, and then use those, try those out, see how the students interact with them, and then kind of tailor it from there. Baby steps, use things that are already out there. It could be as simple as a story map that you find out there that is already done, maybe not an interactive one, but something that is already done in a professional manner. Maybe from a government organization or whatever that deals with your curriculum, and then work your way up to maybe a lesson that the students interact a little bit more with, and then maybe have them try out adding a map of their own or adding data of their own. So you don't have to jump into it all and have students creating on the first day, and that sometimes leads to with you trying to learn along with the students, the same. It gets to be a nightmare sometimes. I'll use that term loosely, but it can be a little bit hectic in that manner. But yeah, I would say start simple.
Cool. And let's see, Dominique, if you can go ahead and stop sharing, and then we can get to see everybody kind of all at once here. Are there some elements that you wanted to add in here as well? I mean, this has got to be impressive seeing some students, what they can do in a short span of time.
Are you talking to me?
Sure.
Oh, yeah. You know, with our last project on the CubeSat, that was an amazing project. You know, I had students write a proposal in Q1 on what mission they would propose to do for the Department of Education CT mission CubeSat, and they came up with they would use the CubeSat with an infrared sensor to fly over areas that are high fire risk that have a lot of homeless people, and then they would use that to map that to share with the fire department. And so our proposal was selected as one of 5 national finalists, and we were given $5,000 to implement the project. And they did an amazing job. They made a great story map out of it. They had to write a flight report, and then we turned it into a scientific paper for their final. So it was very cool.
Very cool. And Arpi, jump on back in again. There's a question here for you. Oh, it looks like you have answered it, but say a little bit more about incorporating GIS in your future studies. What will those include?
Yeah, so I'll be a political science major starting next year. And I know that even in politics, GIS is really important. So I'm hoping to incorporate that into like university projects and just my personal interest.
Okay, that was it crackled up a little bit. And so where are you going to be heading? Try that again.
Well, I'll be going to UC San Diego in the fall.
UC San Diego. There's some good GIS happening there. Okay, folks, keep throwing items in here. Judy, there was a question that I saw. Did you get to, or are you interested in sharing your content and pointing people to it? And I don't know if you had a chance to put it online and share it. Oh, I'll bet there it is.
I see
way up in the very beginning. Yep.
Yeah, the one map that I did share, I hope I shared the one that they were looking for, it's just sort of the outline map that I use with the teachers. So in their first journal, it doesn't have what I don't even have the directions of the content they need to add. It's just saying, it's for the teachers to look at and say, hey, you need to practice all the different types of text in this particular thing. And so I give examples of all of that stuff. In the second week, okay, here's examples of how you embed certain things into your story map. So that's what I shared. In terms of other story maps, oh man, I have a ton of them for that are used for that are lesson based. I guess maybe I'm thinking more about the lessons. And I like what Mike did by putting them into story maps so that they were more accessible. But yeah, I have a ton of lessons and stuff about creating all these different things. So
yeah. Hey, there's one question for everybody here. This is an interesting question with a lot of educators paying attention to Chromebooks. Mike, in particular, since you're covering a variety of grade levels, have you had experience with teachers and students on Chromebooks?
Yes, I have. Our system has that gives the Chromebooks to students for use during the school year. And yeah, everything works fine on the Chromebooks. There used to be a few glitchy things with the story maps a few years ago that with some of the different browsers, wasn't interacting correctly. Now, I've over the last couple of years not had any issues at all.
Very cool. Well, I just want to do, it's amazing how fast time flies when you're working with great people here. I just want to say thank you one more time to, wait a minute, I need to go to page 2 here, to our presenters, Judy and Mike and Dominique, and to say that, gee, we're ready to jump to, wait a second, we get a break. We get not just a 15-minute break, we get a 30-minute break. Rosemary and company have given us time to go have a sandwich or a quick power nap. Thank you, everybody, for joining. There's one more session to go that has some great content within it. And then we're going to be following up with the special interest group meetings. And there will be a special K-12 one where we're going to give people an opportunity to divide by content area. So we hope that you'll join us for that. Thank you, everybody. Let's see if we can, Charlie, stop sharing and everybody can turn on your cameras and give these folks a great big visual round of applause here. This is outstanding. Thanks, everybody. Okay, Rosemary's got to kill us off here. So everybody go ahead and sign out and we'll see you in the next session.